Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Shack, where I've been busy over the past few weeks putting the almost finishing touches to the new home and studio. It's been a lot of hard work, but with the electrics and plumbing now all in place, we're ready for the drywall and flooring and decorating and furnishing. And all of this has needed a lot of organisation. Easy these days with our pocket-sized, instant on and always available apps and access to the internet, but it wasn't always that way, was it, Mr. Sugar? I'd like to take a moment to thank the sponsor for the channel, PCBWay. For retro computing enthusiasts like us, they offer everything we need to keep our old machines going and build cool new stuff too. From PCB design to fabrication, CNC machining and 3D printing through to turnkey solutions, they're fast, affordable and provide amazing quality. And at a starting price of only $5 for PCBs, an assembly from only $29, it's friendly on the wallet too. They're our official sponsor, keeping our soldering irons hot and our tea towels fancy. Now, on with the show. So if you love charming misfires, and who among retro tech fans doesn't, the Amstrad PenPad PDA600 is your cup of very British tea. Launched in March 1993, this stylus-driven electronic organiser tried to bring pen computing to the masses, just as the world was getting giddy about PDAs. It was smaller and cheaper than Apple's Newton, was released to the market ahead of Apple's product, had trainable handwriting recognition, synced to a PC, and looked the business in its little folio case. It also didn't sell. Let's have a little look back at why. The early 90s were a heady time for anyone convinced the mouse and keyboard were relics. Magazines were promising that the pen is mightier than the keyboard, and trade shows were filled with prototype slates and styluses. Everyone from Go Corporation and Momenta to Apple, AT&T and Tandy wanted a piece of what was being called the pen computing revolution. The idea was simple but seductive. Computers should respond to handwriting, sketches and taps instead of typing. With the world falling in love with laptops, organisers and early mobile phones, pen computing seemed like the next natural leap. The newly coined term, Personal Digital Assistant, PDA, was suddenly on every tech journalist's lips after Apple CEO John Sculley unveiled it at the 1992 CES show. But as the Computer History Museum later observed in its exhibition Revolution, the first 2,000 years of computing, this was a revolution that fizzled before it flourished. The Computer History Museum describes pen computing as technologically seductive but commercially premature, a brilliant idea constrained by 1990s hardware. Handwriting recognition wasn't reliable, battery life was poor, screens were dim and the cost to function ratio was hard to justify. And yet, as the Computer History Museum notes, those early failures weren't wasted. They forced engineers and designers to completely rethink mobility and personal computing. They normalised synchronisation between handhelds and desktops, something that would later define the Palm Pilot era. They embedded the concept of context-aware personal information, the modern calendar, contacts, notes model. They cemented the notion that technology should be personal, portable and always on hand, philosophies that underpin smartphones today. So while the pen revolution stumbled commercially, it succeeded conceptually. It established the design DNA for a world that wasn't quite ready for it yet. And into that transitional moment stepped the Amstrad PenPad, a distinctly British take on the handheld dream, aimed not at executives or tech evangelists, but at normal people who might otherwise be shopping for a filofax. Amstrad's PDA600 was a pocketbook-sized device that was aimed deliberately at the traditional filofax organiser crowd and was definitely not marketed as being a tiny PC. Reviewers of the day called it an organiser first and foremost, and fairly priced as one. It came in a hinged protective cover and used a stylus with a trainable character-by-character recogniser where you taught it how you drew your letters, and it did a decent if imperfect job of turning your scrawl into text. Under the hood, it was ingenious in a very Amstrad way. CPU was a Zilog Z180 at 14.3 MHz, plus two little Z8 microcontrollers for power management and handwriting recognition. 128K of RAM with dedicated memory for the display and recogniser, a 240 by 320 monochrome LCD, not backlit, a PCMCIA Type 1 slot and a mini RS232 port. And that's your lot. It was powered by 3 AA batteries plus a lithium backup cell. And the operating system was custom firmware developed by the Eden Group. Crucially, like later Palm devices, the penpad synchronised with a desktop computer, allowing your calendar and contacts to stay in step, a very forward-thinking feature for 1993. Amstrad pitched the penpad as the affordable way into the exciting new world of pen computing, roughly £299 at launch. In the UK, it was explicitly sold as an electronic organiser, not a computer, and sat in high street windows beside filofaxes and fax machines rather than next to PCs. So why did it stumble? Well, there was a difference between handwriting recognition reality and handwriting recognition dreams. The trainable recognition was clever but inconsistent, it worked well for neat writers and drove everyone else mad. And that wasn't just an Amstrad thing, Apple suffered the same embarrassment, the tech just wasn't ready. There were also significant hardware compromises to get to the selling price. The low contrast, non-backlit display and small memory reinforced the sense that this was an organiser with pretensions, not a full PDA. It felt underpowered next to its flashier, if costlier peers. And the market wasn't ready either. The early 1990s pen revolution failed largely because no one, vendors, journalists or consumers, knew quite what they wanted. Was this the next computer or just a smarter diary? And while the new pen devices were tripping over their styluses, Psion simply kept delivering practical handhelds that worked perfectly from day one. For many Europeans, that reliability trumped novelty. By Amstrad's own later account, the penpad sold poorly. By mid-1995, with stock lingering, prices had fallen to around £117.50, and by the end of its life there were warehouses filled with unsold units that had to be liquidated through Tandy at around £50 a piece, barely half the production cost. A more advanced successor, sometimes referred to internally as the PIC 700, rumoured to include messaging or paging features, never made it past the prototype stage. So, if success means sales and staying power, the penpad was a flop, but in spirit it was a clever, affordable experiment that captured the optimism of its age. It beat the Apple Newton to stores by a few weeks, it normalised PC synchronisation for the mass market, and it brought pen computing to the high street instead of the boardroom. Had Amstrad stuck with the concept or found a niche in corporate logistics or healthcare, which is where later PDAs thrived, history might have judged it differently. The penpad remains a lovably British artefact of the early digital age, a plucky attempt to democratise cutting-edge tech with off-the-shelf parts and a why not attitude. Didn't spark a revolution, but it reflected one perfectly, that giddy moment when handwriting was going to change the world, and nobody realised it would take another decade or two and a few billion smartphones to make it true. A for audacity, B for execution, D for timing. And today, A+ for collectability, especially if you still got the stylus, folio case and that tiny sync cable ready to scribble into history. This particular unit has certainly seen better days. It's sticky and horrible, and the screen has some artifacts, so I'm not sure if it's really worth fixing, even if it could be fixed. So it'll probably just go back in its box and stay a little footnote in my collection. I hope you've enjoyed this little look back in time. Did you have one of these early PDAs? Let us know in the comments. And until next time in the shack, it's back to the building site for me.